The information found in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hi, and welcome to the Women in Depth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lourdes Viado. Join me as we explore the inner lives of women, their struggles, fears, hopes, and dreams. We'll go beneath the surface and take a deeper look at what is hidden, unknown, uncertain, and uncomfortable. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I am very excited today to welcome back an incredible woman, a beautiful soul inside and out, who first graced the podcast back in November of 2016. And this beautiful soul is Bethany Webster. Bethany came on the podcast to talk about her work around the mother wound. And her work on the mother wound is based on a body of work that she had been working on in isolation over the course of 15 years. And she wrote this article, Why It's Crucial for Women to Heal the Mother Wound. I came across this article. It touched me deeply, resonated, and I knew that the world needed to hear more about this. And that's when Bethany came onto the podcast to speak more on what the mother wound is. Bethany's work addresses a crucial gap in our understanding of women's psychology and empowerment by comprehensively defining the mother wound and how it manifests in women's lives. Through a blend of cutting-edge research on intergenerational trauma, feminist theory, and psychology with her own personal story, Bethany's work is the result of decades of research and her own journey of healing. Bethany speaks, consults, and mentors around the world, sharing her growing body of work that is raising the standard of women's leadership and personal development. Hi, Bethany, and welcome.
Hi, Lourdes. Thanks for having me here today.
I am just, as I stated before our conversation and in this intro, I am just so honored and excited to have you back to share more about how your work has developed, because I think that your work is timely and it's much needed for the healing of women and of the world.
Thank you so much, Lourdes. I'm so happy to be back on your podcast. The work that you do as well feels really special and has a real depth and power to it. So I'm really honored to be on your podcast and to share more about this work of healing the mother wound and discovering the inner mother. How the work is evolving and how it's being resonant around the world more and more as the world is changing, as we're entering and living through an unprecedented time of uncertainty, loss, and kind of a liminal space. So I think the work is even more needed than ever.
Yes, absolutely. We are in this in-between space, and the world is different. It's changed so much. And I think, in this liminal space is this space also for something new.
Yeah.
For what needs to be birthed into the world to kind of incubate. And I think we're all in this space right now where, while it's uncomfortable and painful, there's also deep transformation happening.
Totally. Yes. And it's something I never would have imagined quite how it's happening. I think a lot of us knew we were entering something big was going to happen, something needed to happen. But I'm in such awe of how it's unfolding and how it is putting us all in this very uncomfortable position, needing to look at things that we've needed to look at, to feel the things that maybe that have been in shadow. And so it helps me trust, like you said, that there is going to be there's something new that's on the horizon for us.
Yeah. And, I keep thinking about how it's always darkest before dawn. So I'm thinking, okay, I know there's a pinprick here in this darkness, and just trusting that and I guess settling into this space for now.
Yeah, totally. The darkness, it's so deep. It's so rich with material for us to look at. And for those of us who are like ready and wanting this, I think for those that have been on the path of healing or healing our trauma, transformation, spiritual growth, that have been working on this for years now, decades even.
Yeah.
Now I think I'm seeing those folks are really going even deeper into the work.
So, Bethany, I wanted to, just for our listeners who perhaps this is their first time hearing of your work, or they haven't heard the first episode. And just for our listeners, Bethany was first on the podcast in November 2016. And that episode was all about healing the mother wound. And, she talked about what the mother wound is, how it affects aspects of a woman's life. She touched on the mother wound and its connection and relationship to patriarchy, the 3 levels of the mother wound, how unhealthy motherhood behaviors in our adult life are actually a pattern continuing from our own mother wound, taboos and stereotypes around the mother wound, and why talking about the mother wound or an awareness of the mother wound isn't simply dredging up the past. So, Bethany, can you share a little bit? And I know this is such a big question, of what is the mother wound. I mean, that could be a whole other conversation, but just enough to bring people up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. This term, the mother wound, had been used here and there by authors and poets, for years here and there, but no one had yet really fleshed out what it is, how it manifests, how to heal it. So in my work, which really grew out of 23 years now as a client in long-term depth psychotherapy myself, which helped me kind of change my internal landscape, my attachment blueprint. And so I've been on this mega journey with it. And I started writing about it in 2013 and had kind of a big just download on how it relates to women's empowerment, how it's really the missing piece. So that's when I wrote that article in 2014, really like laid down what it is. So in my definition, the mother wound has actually 4 levels. I've added the planetary level, but the first level is the most important, which is the personal level. And the personal mother wound is basically a set of internalized beliefs and patterns that we took on that originated from our relationship with our mother, with the dynamics between our mothers and ourselves, how that shaped our sense of self. But it's really pertaining to the ways that we limit ourselves, the way that we feel not good enough, the way that we feel unworthy, the ways that we sabotage or hold ourselves back. That's really the personal mother wound. It's how any painful dynamics with our mothers shaped or limited how we see ourselves. And that's really the reason why it's the most important, is because as we do the work on our personal mother wound, and I have a process that I teach on that, it naturally extends to the other levels. The next level is the cultural mother wound. And that has to do with how we live in a patriarchal culture that says that women are less than. It's just this atmosphere that we breathe, like a toxic gas. It's present in the media we consume, the governmental policies, the religions. It's been around for a long time. It's in the air that we breathe. And so this belief in female inferiority distorts our society. It distorts the culture, because when half the population is deemed inferior, it has a distorting effect. So really, the mother wound is a product of patriarchy. It's the pain of being a woman in a patriarchal culture, and how women through the generations cope with that, and the dysfunctional coping strategies that we use to endure it, to live through it. So that's the cultural piece. And then the third piece is the spiritual mother wound. And here we go even deeper. The spiritual mother wound has to do with how pain between ourselves and our mothers, whether it's on the more mild end of the spectrum or the more traumatic, severe end of the spectrum, it acts as a wall between us and life itself. So we start to feel cut off, separate, disconnected from life. Like, do I belong on the planet? Do I belong in this body? Can I trust other people? Can I trust the fact that I exist? So it gets to this really existential level of feeling separate and not connected. And the great news is that as we heal our personal mother wound, we help to transform the culture, as well as our spiritual awakening becomes possible. We start to feel more connected to life. We start to feel one with life, that we have inherent value, that we matter. Just because we exist, we have worth, and that we belong. So that's the spiritual aspect, is dissolving that wall of separation between ourselves and ourselves, within ourselves, with other people, and with life. And then the fourth and final level of the mother wound is the planetary level. And as time goes on, we start to see, with climate change and deforestation, mass extinction of species, we start to see how the mother wound impacts how we treat the planet that we live on, that gives us life, that sustains us and nourishes us, that we are actually harming ourselves, harming her. So as we do this work more and more, as more of us on the planet understand this and do the work, we can transform that relationship with Mother Earth to one of interconnection, interbeing, and feeling part of a family on the earth, with the earth.
It just amazes me. It kind of boggles my mind how far-reaching the dynamics between mother and child are.
Lord, as time goes on, and like I said, I'm year 23 in my own therapy, in long-term therapy, with a single person, with a single therapist, and my work continues to get deeper. And I have continuing awe of the reverberations of the mother-child relationship are just, and I don't think society, our culture, we have no idea, and that's one of my goals with my work, is to increasingly bring forward the urgency and the primacy, the importance of mother-child dynamics, that really all of our conflicts, all of our painful problems that we're dealing with come down to attachment, basic human attachment. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of, I haven't seen many therapists yet doing this kind of profound developmental attachment work, because I think it requires that the therapist herself or himself go to these depths and themselves, like on their own journey, because we can't take people where we haven't gone. So I hope that there may be a renaissance of time where we start to really, as a culture and society, have a deepening respect and curiosity and hunger to learn more, so that we can be there for ourselves and our families, and kind of transform culture itself into a place where all people can thrive.
Yeah, and you said the word reverberation, and I think that that was a really wonderful word to kind of try to capture the depth and breadth of this dynamic. And I was thinking too, the work with my clients, and it's so interesting because we spend so much time on those dynamics, and they show up in, the self-criticism, the perfectionism, the comparison, the competition between women, this difficulty of showing any compassion for ourselves, difficulty receiving. This shows up, with, someone making choices that, even though they want to be loved, they want nurturance, they want that, deep connection, they also sabotage and push against it. It's so interesting. Like you said, it all comes down to attachment. And again, when I first began my work in depth psychology, I was drawn very much to the work of Clarissa Pinkola Estes.
Yeah.
And she had this audiobook. I don't know if it was ever put into print, but it was called Warming the Stone Mother. And it was stories of the unmothered child. And she took stories from around the world, myths and legends and fairy tales, to describe and tell the story of this mother-child dynamic, and what happens when that dynamic doesn't work, or doesn't work well, or is damaged or hurtful. And that's why I was so excited when I saw that you have your book coming out next year on the inner mother, because it really is about developing and nurturing that part of yourself. And those are the beginning steps. And so I'm just so excited and moved by your work, because as you describe these 4 levels, it just told me, yes, this is why this matters. This is why this is so important. This is why, that the mother-child dynamic is so critical. I interviewed a guest last fall, and her name is Selma Bachevek, and she was talking about how developmental trauma and attachment-related problems affect infants and toddlers, and even how these babies remember from in utero and throughout infancy, and these memories are stored within their bodies. And so it really just aligns with what you are sharing about the impact and the reverberations of the dynamics between mother and child, because even in utero, these dynamics are already happening. And Gabor Mate, who is one of the preeminent researchers also with trauma, speaks about this. If the mother is anxious, if she's angry, if she's fearful, if she's feeling, the effects of trauma, that is passed on to her child. So really, again, just speaking to the gravitas of this dynamic and its significance.
Yes, yes. And that's why I think it's like really exciting that this work of healing the mother wound and discovering the inner mother is a foundation for a new kind of world. And because if you think about it, it's like, where I'm at in my journey lately, I've been thinking a lot about the defenses. We all have defenses around our pain, things like that maybe we project onto other people. We feel afraid of connection. We might attack or push people away, or like you said, we might sabotage ourselves. These were all coping mechanisms that we learned so early on how to protect ourselves as children when we were met with some kind of confusion or moments of feeling abandoned. And so they continue, naturally, they just continue into our adult lives as kind of an automatic way. I like to think of it like an invisible fence, the certain interactions we had when we were very small, very vulnerable, and cognitively, we weren't really developed enough yet to understand what was happening, but they become automatic. Yeah. And then as adults, we stay within certain confines of behaving and thinking. And the tragedy I see is that we blame ourselves. We think, what's wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? And there must be something wrong with me. But really, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just, this is the result of what your brain developed to cope with the environment. So whatever lack of environment, whatever overwhelm or neglect, what have you, your brain just developed in a way that helped you survive it. So these defenses are like a kind of bridge that get us to a place where we can survive intact the dysfunction of our childhood, however severe or mild it was. But then once we get to a place where we're like, okay, I survived, and now things aren't working, those defenses become barriers to our thriving and our potential. So it's an exciting moment when people get to kind of a place of this, my life isn't working, I need to change something. And then to bring it back to that attachment, algorithm. I like to think of it like we are born with kind of a safety algorithm. And for some of us, safety meant keeping people away. For me, for example, my safety algorithm was like, I'm going to be loved and approved of if I pretend like I'm perfect and have no needs. If I try to be an adult as much as possible and hide my childness and be like a little adult, then I'm going to get love. Then I'm going to survive. But that led me to burnout as an adult. So I was like, okay, that's not working anymore. And then I realized, wow, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just, that's how I coped. And when we get to that place, we can have a lot of compassion, I think, when we understand more about how attachment works, how the mother wound plays out. It stops feeling like there's something wrong with us. And it's more like, oh, this is just how I developed. And now I can change that. And that's where the inner mothering comes in as really the centerpiece of my work. How do we replace what I call the mother gap? So like the gap between what you needed from your mother and what you actually received. Usually that gap is something we project onto other people, like be my mother, tell me I'm valuable, make me feel worthy. We don't do this consciously, but this is something like for me, it was about achievement. If I just achieve enough, if I just do enough, another degree, then I'm going to be worthy. Then my mother is going to see me and say, wow, look at you. She's finally going to be the mother I need. So, but when we figure that out, we become aware of it, then we can work with it. We can fill that gap by learning to become that mother to ourselves. We build inner safety, not becoming dependent on external people and situations to help us feel loved and safe, but instead we build that resilience inside. And that's when the fun really begins, because we become that mother, we learn what we missed, we start cultivating that on a daily basis. And then as that child in us feels safer, we can then become more, more bold. We can be, and this is what I see in the women I work with, leadership qualities just emerge, the desire to speak truth, to stand their ground, to go for what they really want, to expand a capacity for pleasure and for good things. It's amazing to witness how we blossom. And really what's happening with the inner mothering work is the brain is actually being restructured. It's like, we could think of the amygdala as the inner child, the more primitive, very old, early coping mechanisms. And the inner mother is kind of like the prefrontal cortex, the newer part of the brain. So we build these connections. And as we do, naturally things open up, new choices, new possibilities that we couldn't even see before, new ways of being. And it's exciting because, I think about the more people that could do this, what possibilities could emerge for us as a culture, worldwide, new structures, just like new structures in our brain can result in new structures in the world,
Yeah. So it's this process. I tell my clients on a neuroscience level, we're rewiring your brain. We're creating, new neural pathways, new ways of responding. And I so love that you're bringing up the brain, because it so lines up with these concepts as well. And it's wonderful to see the research also with, what happens when our amygdala is activated. And one of the things that stood out for me in this is just when our amygdala is activated, we can only do one of three things. We're going to fight, we're going to flee, or we're going to shut down in some way or some combination. And how as adults, when we find ourselves in like this deja vu of I've been here before, the brain recognizes this looks like something in my childhood when I wasn't safe. And, it happens so quickly, and we just do what we've done before to stay safe, not realizing that we're caught in this emotional memory. And I like to tell my clients that, what you're feeling now, this is a memory. But in this moment, you're safe. You're safe right now. But there was a time when you weren't. And helping them to discern that you're uncomfortable, you're distressed, but you're safe.
Yes, I love that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the safety is alongside. That's what I do around with the inner mothering work, is just learning to kind of be with whatever emotions are coming up.
Yeah. So, Bethany, if someone's listening and this is resonating with them and they're thinking, okay, how do I start? What's something I can do today or tomorrow? Some very simple steps, just to begin to try these new ways of responding out.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of little ways that you can get started. And one of my favorite things to recommend as like a first step is to find, if you can, a picture of yourself when you were a child and start to look at it on a regular basis and develop a kind of rapport with this part of you. You could like look at it every morning, you could have it in your near where you brush your teeth or something in your bathroom or something, but just a way to say hello, like greet this little girl, this little child, this little boy, whoever it is, and really embrace him in your heart. See if you can cultivate a feeling of loving curiosity towards this little one. And one of the biggest messages that you can bring, and it takes 2 seconds as a way to dip your toe into this, is just to say to that little one, like, for example, with myself, I would say, little B, I'm here with you. I'm your big B, and I'm here to take care of you now. That's 2 sentences. And it just kind of shows to the inner child, who is a living energy in you, that you're there. And for so many of us as little kids, we didn't get enough of that. We didn't get enough of that sincere emotional presence, like the reassurance. For whatever reason, our parents might have been distracted, very wounded, dealing with a lot of things themselves. They weren't able, for whatever reason, to be really present. So even just announcing that, hey, I'm your big B and I'm here with you. If you could close your eyes and say that, maybe put your hand on your heart, close your eyes and say that internally, quietly or out loud. Even if you did that like twice a day or 3 times a day for 2 weeks, you would feel something change. You will definitely feel something shift. And it's a nice, easy way to start. Sometimes people have some fears about connecting with your inner child, a feeling of, she won't trust me. I'm afraid if I open up to her that maybe there'll be a lot of emotions that'll be scary or painful to deal with. And that's normal. I want to just say that's totally normal. And if your inner child does feel inaccessible or not open to connecting with you, like there's no movement there, it feels like maybe there's a fear of your inner child connecting, you can empathize with that. You can say, oh, little B, it makes sense to me that you would be a little apprehensive about connecting. You've been through a lot, and you can take as long as you want before, connecting with me. I'm here for the long haul. I'm not going to go anywhere. So you can take your time. So this alone is another way to build trust, to really accept and bring empathy. I always tell my clients the first thing, whenever you feel like stuck or stumped on how to handle something, just go within and just give yourself lots of empathy for whatever is showing up.
Yeah.
That's always step one. So just bringing that warmth, if you have a tough moment, this is another thing you can do. If you have a tough moment at work or maybe with your spouse or with your kids or something, you can feel your inner child having a little trigger. You can just turn within, take a few deep breaths, put your hand on your heart, and just imagine holding that child, right? It can be that simple as well. So the comfort, it's really, comfort is a nice place to start. Another deeper way you can connect, get started with some of this is just a more intellectual approach that might work better for some people, is to think about, what did you really need? Do some journaling on what did you need as a child that you didn't get enough of? You can think about it from that level, or you could even come at it from what's one of my current challenges right now that's repeating? What's a replicating issue? I guarantee you that replicating issue has a thread to your inner child. And it's usually around an algorithm of safety that your adult self wants to move forward in some way or wants to accomplish something, but your inner child is putting the brakes on, usually because the safety algorithm is trumping where your adult wants to go. I like to say the inner child is like the gatekeeper of our upper limits, right? Mm-hmm. So she's the one that keeps things around that invisible fence so that you don't get hurt again like you were in the past. So that's another way of thinking about it. How is my inner child keeping me safe? Maybe it's a fear of visibility, fear of being exposed, abandoned, neglected. Those are usually the biggest ones where it comes down to some level of abandonment. I'm afraid I'm going to be alone. I'm afraid I'm going to be left behind. I'm afraid no one's going to love me. I see that a lot with the women leaders that I work with, that they have incredible potential and goals, but the inner child is terrified that success is going to lead to some kind of abandonment, because we live in a patriarchy that says that women who are ambitious, going places, speak their truth, those aren't the attractive kind of women, right? So there's this fear of, and we watched our mothers sacrifice themselves, stay too small. We watch that. So there's a lot of ambivalence about female power in women and in the culture as well. So that's why I recommend that, bringing in a lot of grace, compassion, gentleness. So many of us didn't get enough gentleness. So thinking about, where's your safety algorithm? What does your inner child need to feel safe? What are her biggest fears right now? An advanced one, I'll end with this one. If you want to go advanced on this, if you're someone who has done some of this work before, a cool thing that you might want to try is doing what I call like a morning ritual with your inner child, where you kind of prepare like a morning greeting. You can write all this out in your journal or print it out, but it basically addresses, what are your inner child's biggest fears? And you have a little dialogue every morning with her that kind of tucks her in, so to speak, so that you start the day with your inner child feeling like she's being mothered, she's being tucked in. Your adult self is at the wheel. And this can be huge, especially for parentified daughters, those girls that grew up too fast, had to be the parents to their own parents. Inner child work can get tricky with the parentification, because the inner child actually doesn't believe she's a child. She kind of believes she's more of an adult. So she almost has to learn how to be a baby or how to be a child that receives care. So that's kind of a fun part of the process, to affirm early in the morning before your day gets going. You have a connection with the inner child and you remind her. I have this little handy phrase I teach my clients. It's validate and differentiate. just a handy phrase. But what that basically means is you start with validating the feelings of the inner child. Like your feelings are normal and natural given what you've been through. And you kind of really show that you feel that, you validate her feelings. And then the second part is differentiate, where you differentiate now is different. Now you have an adult self, a big B who's here for you. And today I'm going to be with you, supporting you every step of the way. You can rest. You can be a child. You can rest in me. I've got everything under control. And this is what our day is going to be like. And I'm going to be with you every step of the way. And if you need me, you can reach out to me. Some people even work with having a doll or a bear, something concrete that you can hold or rock. And then you start your day kind of tucked in and see how your day goes differently with that morning ritual. That's kind of a nice advanced one that I've seen help people get a lot of traction on this.
That's an incredible ritual. I love that one. I'm going to be sharing that one with my clients, and I'm going to try that one out as well. I love that.
Yeah.
And, you just made me think about how, like, as a mom, and moms, we know what our children are scared of, moms who are attuned and paying attention. And, we kind of have a sense of this is coming up. My child is going to struggle with this. So we try to prepare them for it, right? We address what might come up. Or I was even thinking a way to, even with this morning exercise in the evening, because, for my son, at the end of the day, part of our bedtime ritual is for him to tell me something good about his day, something he's grateful for, and then something maybe that was difficult or he struggled. And I thought this would also be something you could do in the evening, with kind of checking in with your inner child before you actually tuck them in for the night, a way to maybe help quiet the mind, with that, again, validating any things that came up that day and differentiating, kind of bookending, with the morning and nighttime. Yeah.
I actually do that. I actually do morning and evening myself.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And the nighttime, it's kind of like reviewing, let's go over what we did today and kind of reviewing it, and then affirming you're safe. Your big B has got you. You can rest. We're going to wind down. We're going to have a good night's sleep, and I'm going to be with you through the night. If you need me, you can always reach out. I'm here. I'm not far. And tomorrow we're going to have a great day as well. And I say this is the overview of tomorrow, and it's going to be great. So and it makes a huge difference. When I first started inner child work, I was around 20 years old. I got into therapy really early, and I at first was very skeptical. I'm like, this seems like talking to yourself. It seems kind of strange. But I started almost immediately after I started, I could feel like viscerally that something was happening. It really works. So for those of you who might be like, this sounds kind of off or kind of, quite strange, it's normal to feel that. And I encourage you to give it a try and see what you notice. How do you feel differently as you try it?
Bethany, what are some ways that our listeners can get in touch with you, learn more about your work? I know that you also have your free ebook on what is the mother wound that our guests can get access to if they are interested.
Yes, absolutely. My website is called it's www.bethanywebster.com. And there's a ton of free blog articles that you can read, like a whole library. Feel free to check those out. There's the free ebook, What is the Mother Wound? I also have a free Facebook group that people can join. And again, my book is coming out January 5th, 2021. It's called Discovering the Inner Mother, a guide to healing the mother wound and claiming your personal power. That's coming out. And if you pre-order, I'm going to be announcing a bonus this fall. So there'll be some fun things coming up. I'm also going to be teaching another free course I did in May around Mother's Day. It was like a week-long free course. Anybody can participate. There's worksheets. It's like a full-on thing where you get to really explore the work a bit with my support and with the support of a community. And then if you want to take it deeper, if you like what you experience, there's a promotion for my online course, which teaches the bread and butter of what I do, which is the 7 steps of how to heal the mother wound. And there's going to be a promotion for that coming up in the fall. And I think the theme is going to be around, usually I do a holiday toolkit, like how to navigate being with families. And I know Lourdes has been a wonderful guest on one of my episodes in the past. And I think this year, because of what we're dealing with, it's not going to have a holiday focus, but maybe more of a, how do we handle family gatherings in general, with all the polarization, and how do we stay true to ourselves and honor our own transformations that we're in the midst of while interacting with our families? Because wow, what a place of of power and transformation and making this stuff all come to life. So if you join my list, which you can do at bethanywebster.com and get that free ebook, you'll get in your inbox announcements about all of this coming up. So yeah, thank you. And I'm excited to welcome more of you into my community.
I'm so excited about everything you've shared. And I love that you have created that free course, like around that you mentioned that you did around Mother's Day. And that's something that is available to anyone who this resonates with. I'm signing up for it.
Awesome.
I'm very excited also about your book, Bethany. And as soon as you have the information, of course, we'll be very excited to add that to the show notes for today's episode.
Yeah, it's already available on Amazon. And if you want to order it from your local bookstore, which I encourage people to do, is reach out to your local bookstores and you can pre-order it right away and you'll get it it'll be delivered to you around January 5th. Very excited to share that with you. It has my own story, like what I've lived through and what I offer. So I'm excited to hear how people take it. Thank you so much, Lourdes. It's been so wonderful to be a guest on your podcast. I so appreciate you and all the amazing work you do, and the caliber of the content that you offer your community is really impressive, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Bethany. And I am so grateful that we've connected. You have been a huge part of my personal healing, and through you also it's impacted my work with my clients, and I just look forward to continuing down this road together and seeing what unfolds.
Me too, Lourdes. Thanks again.
Thanks so much for listening to the Women in Depth podcast. I hope it brings you a deeper understanding of yourself and others, and that you found some insights that illuminated and inspired. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting Women in Depth with a one-time or recurring donation. Any amount is appreciated and helps us continue to provide free, quality content for the world. If donating resonates with you, you can find the donation link on today's show notes. You can also follow Women in Depth on Facebook and YouTube, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe on iTunes. Again, thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.